I'm Gene Grant. Thanks for joining us for New Mexico in Focus. We just saw the documentary Pregnant. What's your reaction? Is teen pregnancy a concern in your community or your extended family? Get in touch with us online at newmexicoinfocus.org to share your thoughts on teen pregnancy here in New Mexico. I'm joined this week by a special panel of local leaders. New Mexico State Representative Georgene Lewis is here. Johnny Wilson with Young Fathers of Santa Fe joins us. Tanya Esparza, the Executive Director of Young Women United, is here, and Dr. Brenda Peretta from the University of New Mexico Health Sciences Center. Now, in this conversation, we want to talk about preventing unplanned pregnancies and also what can be done to support people if they find themselves becoming a parent at a young age. And Dr. Peretta, let me ask you this very basic question at the very beginning of all this. Are we giving teens enough information? We just saw in the documentary, of course, that some of the teens were reacting that something sooner in their lives with a little more breadth and depth would have been helpful. What could we be saying to teenagers to help with the situation?
Well, you know, the teens go to school. I mean, that's kind of like the baseline, right? And so there's very limited sex education in the school setting. Right. Also, teens have to travel outside of the school settings without permission from parents. So those are compounding barriers. And then they get to the health center, and then there's additional barriers there. And so you have barriers on top of barriers, and then it just dissuades a teen from getting the access that they need. And so I really do feel that it needs to start at the school setting, but in order for that to happen, we need to have the policymakers, AKA the administrators at the school level, be okay with that. And so every school should have a school-based health center with trained providers who are very comfortable with reproductive health. We're
going to get into some details of that. I appreciate you putting that on the table right away. It's interesting. Johnny, good to see you, and thank you for joining us as well.
Thanks for having me.
Does that make sense for you as well for boys? We'll talk about your angle on this as well, but for boys, is that amount of information key as well?
It's critical.
Yeah.
For years, sexual health content, it's spare, which is a problem, but even that which is delivered tends to be focused exclusively on girls.
Gotcha.
Or primarily on girls, and usually the girls are making sexual decisions with a male partner, sometimes with a female partner as well, but and we need to honor that, but with a male partner needs to know where they're at, and if we don't provide them information, they're going to struggle with those decisions.
Interesting. Tanya, I have to imagine for kids, we're all kids. We understand we get our information from our peers, from our friends. Sometimes that information is not quite correct. Sometimes that information could be very not correct. Sometimes really not good. So again, how getting information from official people can sometimes be a barrier. How do we break down those barriers? What we're talking about here, get that information out there.
So at Young Women United, we actually we don't work on teen pregnancy prevention. And we understand that although it's well-intentioned, the teen pregnancy prevention models, sometimes it can be a bit misguided and can actually be a bit harmful to our communities.
In what way?
Instead, we believe that young people need access to the resources, information, and education they need to make real decisions about their own bodies and lives, informed decisions. Oftentimes when we ask the question of teen pregnancy prevention advocates, what about teen pregnancy do you want to eliminate or prevent? And they often, respond with, well, the cost of teen parents is so high on on the state taxes. The outcomes of their families are really poor. And I think those are valid concerns. I think we all at this table are really concerned about the outcomes of all families, regardless of their age. But I think that we do a great disservice to our young people when we utilize teen parents as scapegoats to avoid addressing the larger, broader systemic issues that come up when we're talking about young parents, i.e. poverty or lack of access to education, lack of access to living wage jobs. Those are issues that our institutions, our policymakers, our decision makers need to be accountable for, and we can't blame those things on young parents.
Interesting. We're going to come back to that as well. I'm interested in what you have to say about a lot of those. Representative Lewis, interesting, you were a young parent as well. You had, I have not a doubt in the world, like we're going to talk about here, perception issues that you had to deal with, that you had to face down. Talk about that, if you would, about being a teen parent and some of those challenges perception-wise.
Well, I grew up in a small rural community. I'm from the Pueblo of Acoma, and I had my daughter when I was a sophomore in high school. And some of that was was, you know, the lack of education, the lack of access, but it's reality, and I think we do have to face it as reality. We can preach abstinence all we want, but the fact of the matter is teen pregnancy happens. So I had my daughter when I was a sophomore in high school, and there's a lot of stigma associated with teen parents. There's no real proof that your financial or health outcome is a result of having a child at a young age or being children of young parents. It's the things that she addressed, zip codes, race, access, and attainment of education. But I was very, very fortunate that my parents supported me from the time, you know, I found out I was pregnant, and being able to support me when I went to school. So I graduated high school on time. I graduated college, you know, in 4 years, and went on to law school. But you know, it's a real issue that we have to address, and we need to quit the shaming of the young parents and really figure out what we need to do to help them, because they now have motivation to do better in life because of these young children that are in their lives.
That's an interesting way to look at it. Let me go back to you, Tanya, to make sure you can pick up on that as well, the idea of shaming people into some kind of better behavior versus supporting people. When I say people, I'm talking father and the mother in the situation. Talk about that if you would. Why does that not work? Why does shaming not work for people, and what do we need to do and otherwise?
I think, like I said before, although well-intentioned, many teen pregnancy prevention models have really been harmful, especially to young women of color. You know, exactly what Representative Lewis just mentioned. You know, your life is over once you become a parent, or you're a cost to taxpayers' dollars.
Yep, hear that a lot.
And that does nothing to support any parent at any age, actually. You know,
well, programs that put the onus on young women to control the sex and whether or not contraception is involved, which is, of course, ridiculous. I mean, male and female together need to have conversations about what we're doing. If it's sexual intimacy, what's going to happen in that? Is there a pregnancy that could result? And we're going to make a decision together, and we're going to empower each other to realize our dreams and our desires, right? Not, it's your job as a woman to take care of the fertility, and what my job as a man is just to bring the erection. That does not support healthy relationships. That doesn't support positive outcomes for babies when they come, and it doesn't matter whether the young person is male or female. If we're disempowering everybody in the equation, the outcomes are going to be negative.
That's a good point.
The important thing to remember too is that parenting is hard at any age. You know, I'm not a mom yet, but I have the honor of knowing parents who are in their 50s to parents who are in their teens. And every family starts out differently. When we're asking for support for young parents, we're actually asking for the things that all parents need, like access to childcare, access to health care. Those are things that all families need regardless of their age. So I think it's important to remember that the support that we're giving young parents, or that we're hoping to provide, is not a handout. It's something that all families need to thrive and to survive in our communities.
Dr. Perretta, you know, you're working ostensibly on both sides of this issue, prevention and care afterwards, certainly, and there's a balance to these things, certainly. But in your view, where does prevention, you know, work best, and where does it not work best? How does that all balance out for you?
So, you know, one of the things that we have to really do in terms of, even before we think about the word prevention, is that there just needs to be this cultural shift in all of the United States, not just focused on, like, you know, minority women or women of color, but a cultural shift across the board where we actually, I don't use the word empower, I use the word, you know, you don't give permission, you co-learn with the community so that they begin to ask these questions about, you know, what are some good decisions for me? We haven't done that classically, you know, in education, in medicine, it's always been this hierarchical approach, just paternalistic view or approach to healthcare or giving or whatever. We need to change that. It's not working for us. You know, we're increasingly becoming more multicultural across the board, across the nation. And those approaches, before we think about prevention, that's where we need to start focusing on, getting into those communities and co-learning with them and seeing what the real needs are and letting them tell us what the issues are. You know, we're on this side seeing sort of the expenditures and, you know, sort of, you know, the other outcomes because we have to have both. Right. But it really starts right there at the grassroots with the community, with the teens. You know, they actually have to believe that they can dream and get to a place of, you know, outside of the community or become leaders before they even go there. I think teen pregnancy is a result of this sort of broken systems that we have. Right. Then, okay, so now that's one piece. Now, if you know, if I'm just looking at a patient now, it starts with educating. You know, people need to know about their bodies. You know, I get a lot of young women, they don't know anything about the menstrual cycle, then they don't know anything about fertility control. That might be something that they want to use. Then once we get to that piece, then we have to start thinking about, okay, these are birth control methods where we can, you know, if you want to prevent a pregnancy, you can. This is the spectrum of what can happen when you're an early teen parent. I agree, teen parenting is difficult at all ages. But, you know, if you come from a sort of disenfranchised community and a lot of money hasn't gone there for your education, you're going to have less resources to work with. So you're entering the pot at a way lesser playing field than the rest of America. Interesting. And so I think it starts from behind the prevention talk in terms of how do we even treat people of color in this country. You know, we get judged by how we treat vulnerable, incarcerated, poor, and we haven't done a good job with that. And it really goes back to that, to the systems issues. And then we can think about the teen pregnancy issue. That's just one of the issues. Interesting. I want to pick up on that in just a minute. This month on Public Square, our monthly program on child well-being, we have covered sex education in New Mexico. Let's hear a bit of what was shared in that show.
We had like a puberty class about like, it was maturation class for like 45 minutes. And I think they're getting to the point now, like in 8th grade, that they're gonna start talking about it, but really there hasn't been anything.
That was from the latest edition of Public Square on New Mexico PBS. Community leaders and young people came together to talk about sex education in New Mexico. You can watch the full episode online. We put a link at newmexicoinfocus.org. Representative Lewis, let me ask you a question. There's been some legislative activity. We had a Legislative Finance Committee report recently about teen pregnancy here in New Mexico. I'd like to get your reaction to that report and then also some of the things that you're working on in the legislature to address this issue.
Well, I think the report was released earlier this year in May, indicating that there's been a steady decline in teen pregnancies. I think it was 35% over the last decade. But still putting us as one of the top states, if not the top states, for teen pregnancies. So, you know, those are just takeaways. But because we have so many teen parents, you know, it was really crucial that we passed legislation in 2013, which allowed teen mothers to have 10 days off after they had their child or her child. Also provided 4 additional days of excused absences so that she can take off days relating to medical care or to the child's medical care. And also allowed, or actually required the schools to provide the amount of days that the parent was absent from school, that amount of days to make up homework that was missed during that time. So, you know, that was really critical. We have Title IX, which I know the Southwest Women's Law Clinic did a survey of 117 New Mexico districts and charter schools and found that although I think the number was 65% of the schools had language regarding students' rights, you had the other 35 that did not. And it's really hard to you know, take advantage of those rights if you don't know what they are. So we also found that or at least the Southwest Women's Law Clinic found that only 35% of those same schools indicated the parental leaves and then the other 65 did not. So I think we need to do more as far as educating our kids and educating administrators within the schools so that they inform students of their rights. So I think that's very crucial at this point.
Tanya, Young Women United was instrumental in getting this legislation together. My understanding is you were basically taking the reality of what folks were telling you we need to have happen to make my outcome successful here. Talk about that if you would, because sometimes people hear things like a couple days here and there for leave, and they think, well, why do we need to do this? But those kind of things can be very critical towards success.
They can be really critical because they actually speak to the reality that young parents are facing in their schools. We were really proud to work on this legislation in collaboration with New Mexico grads and the ACLU of New Mexico with the leadership of young parents themselves. So why we started doing this was because young parents across the state, especially young moms, were telling us that they were being pushed out of school. So being marked truant or absent for taking their child to get a shot or a child well visit. When a football player can go to an away game and that's an excused absence, a young mom cannot count her child being sick as an excused absence. You tally up all of those absences, that equals an expulsion, you're out of school. And so when we're really looking at the economic trajectory of families, we want to make sure that they're set up to make sure that their outcomes are successful, and education is a big part of that. And so because of this, we were able to identify this issue with young parents. We were able to identify that there was an opportunity through Title IX to make sure that young parents had their absence and leave. And like Representative Lewis said, this is not a handout. It was an excused absence policy that required young parents to make up their work, etc. But it's already making such a huge impact in the lives of young parents. 2 years later, we're seeing young parents in Las Cruces, in Los Lunas, in Hobbs utilize this policy to make sure that their children are well taken care of. We have a young mom in Hobbs whose child was born blind, and she had to come to Albuquerque to these very specific doctor's visits. Without that policy, she would have been expelled out of school already. So this is, it's a really crucial legislation that we are really proud to pass. It's the first legislation of its kind across the country, and it's really great that it came from New Mexico.
That's wonderful.
And I personally observed the benefits of this legislation, working with young dads and young moms, even though the young dads don't have the same access to leave. They benefit by virtue of their baby's mom being able to take the leave. And so, I mean, and I've witnessed it, that this piece of legislation has been a great boon to young parents and their success.
Interesting. Representative, do you have something?
Just quickly, I just want to give a lot of credit to Young Women United and the grads, New Mexico grads, because they do such outstanding work, and to thank them for pushing this legislation, because I stood up on the House floor. I was a freshman during the time, and I did inform my colleagues that I was supporting the bill, and one of the reasons was that for one semester I attended New Futures High School, because I was afraid of missing all of my classes and not being able to make up the assignments. So, being that I was living in Acom at the time, I traveled 2 hours every single day to attend high school while I was pregnant and shortly after I gave birth to my daughter. So this is really an important issue, and it shows the impact that it has, because as soon as you have access to education, that's when you start doing better for yourself. So I just want to thank Young Women United. And unfortunately, we did see some House members stand up and say that teen parents were being rewarded for absences. So I think the discussion and those ideas that people have to be changed, because again, it's a reality, and instead of shaming, we need to help our teen parents. So thank you guys.
It's a great victory for the state. Good on everybody. Johnny Wilson from Young Fathers of Santa Fe. I have a couple of specific questions for your angle of this. There was something that struck me watching Public Square last night that was said, and that was about young men respecting boundaries. And the moment sort of passed. It didn't really get talked about a whole lot, but it really made my ears sort of stand up a little bit.
Consent.
Consent, but I also want to ask you about not just understanding boundaries, but respecting boundaries for young men. How do we start that dialogue? Is that strictly a male-to-male conversation? And if so, how do we get that going inside the male world?
I think there's a lot of power potential in that being a male-to-male conversation, but it certainly isn't exclusively a male-to-male conversation. The idea of consent is critical to our discussion of sex and sexuality, in my view, and so many other issues as well. But and this really, it goes back to the old ways of conversation about sex and our attitudes about sex. The fact of the matter is 50% of pregnancies in the United States are unintended. Okay, that's across all age ranges. Right. So for us to point fingers at teenagers about unintended pregnancy is pretty ridiculous, frankly. And to shame them once they get pregnant, it just compounds the ridiculousness. So obviously we're not talking about sex in a good way to begin with. We hear about early adolescent boys pulling ponytails and snapping bra straps, and we talk to the girls and say, well, he probably just likes you, right? Where's the real important conversation? It's with that young man, that boy, about, what are you feeling? Right. How can you better express these? How do you think that girl felt when you did that? Is that what you wanted her to feel? If so, why is that? Those are the conversations we need to be having, not talking to the girl and saying, just deal with it, right? Because then what happens, right? Later on, there's sexual harassment at school or in a workplace, and the lesson has been, just deal with it.
That's right.
Right? And productivity goes down, and all these things that we then point our finger at them for, Right. So really, we need to have, sex happens. This is bad news for a lot of people, but I'm just going to say it. Sex happens in the world. People decide to be sexually intimate with one another, and sometimes they do it with the opposite sex, and sometimes they do it with someone of the same sex, and they make those decisions.
Right.
And we need to start, which I think is what you were saying, instead of saying you should, we need to start with, what is it you want? What do you want out of your life? And most of the teen parents I've worked with, I'll just say, have said, I wouldn't have had a child at this time in my life. If I had had everything in place that I needed to make that decision and enforce it, I wouldn't have done it.
Right.
Now that I do, I love my kid and I'm going to do the best I can. Right? But we're not asking that question when they're 11 years old and 12 years old and 14 and 17. What do you want? We're not giving them the skills in the sexual health arena to figure out what decisions they want to make and then what they need to do to realize those decisions. We're not. We're still an abstinence-only state. We have abstinence-only money in the state of New Mexico, which is overtly shaming sexual health education.
Right.
Overtly. And there's no program that works other than to shame, and yet we do it.
Dr. Perretta, where does the medical community fit into what Johnny's saying here? There's got to be a conversation here that you folks as frontline people, for example, on prevention. I remember I'm 56. There was a time years ago, it was all about prevention was on us as men. It was about condoms. You brought them. The women didn't even know anything about them. It was just all of us were in this conversation. But for medical professionals, it's a much more nuanced conversation now, isn't it? It would seem to me.
It really is, and I have to keep going back to this cultural shift. It's before it was like male-dominated birth control methods. Then we have this feminist movement. Now they're female-dominated birth control methods. So if it fails, then it's all about what this woman has done wrong.
That's right.
And listen, he's right. 50% of the pregnancies are unintended. Half of those are in women using birth control. So it's not like the women are doing anything wrong.
That's right.
But this culture shift has to begin with, kids in Europe, they initiate sex at the same time as kids in the United States. They have a different conversation because they actually talk about it. It's actually a natural thing that, people are going to have sex. Sex is a healthy thing. You have sex means you have a healthy life. But we have stigmatized sex so much, and it really comes down to the lens that we've put on the woman to shame the woman about something dirty that they're doing, where in fact it's like the most natural thing on the face of the planet. And so we have that framework. But in terms of sort of being frontline is, people come in, it's really about even changing the culture of medicine and how we counsel women in an interaction. I happen to come from a reproductive health specialty, so you get like extensive training in that. And we take the shame out of it because we talk about it's a day-to-day thing. You know, you're gonna have sex. You have to spend 30 years of your life preventing a pregnancy to have a family size of 2. So it's a huge responsibility that we put on the woman. And then on top of it, we shame her and we blame her for everything. That's just gotta change. And so it's a framework and it's a cultural shift in medicine, in our society, in our families. I mean, for God's sakes, we're in the year 2015. That misogyny and that mentality against women has got to change.
Interesting. I'm sorry. Quickly, go ahead.
I just want to make a point quickly.
Absolutely.
When you talk to young men about what they can do to prevent pregnancy, I mean, they're aware of condoms, right? But when you start talking about how they can support more women-activated methods and making sure that, you know, by helping take them to the clinic, by helping to pay for it, and that this gives them more respect in the relationship and that their desires are more likely to be honored, young men hear this. They get still and listen. Nobody's told them that they have any power in this realm.
Interesting. Glad you got that in. Interesting. The good news is, Representative Lewis made this point. The LFC report, we've dropped 35% over the last bit of time, and the good things are happening on this issue here for New Mexico. But I want to thank you all for all your individual efforts to take us to the next level. This is something we spend a lot of time with here on New Mexico PBS. We're going to continue to. We appreciate you coming in today to talk about this. Really appreciate it. Thanks for your time. I'm Gene Grant. Thanks for joining us this week for this 1-hour special on teen pregnancy and young parents here in New Mexico. We have links to more information and local resources on our website, NewMexicoInFocus.org. As always, we appreciate your time and effort to stay informed and engaged, and we'll see you next week in Focus.